So before we start, I've been more of a financial journalist, so I'll have an economic lens, at least in my opening pointers. So there are 2 or 3 figures that you have to remember. One is that India imports about $114 billion worth of goods from China. That's increased by about 88% in the last decade. We export about $14 billion, and that's only gone up about 19% in the last decade. What is obviously concerning is the overdependence on many of these items. The Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations recently pointed out that for some 562 items, we import 80% or more from China alone. So there's an overdependence. Moreover, the argument is that many of these items could actually be bought cheaper from elsewhere. So the connect is so strong. So why has this happened? And actually the answer to this came to me retrospectively. About 20 years ago, I was in Shenzhen, which is a manufacturing powerhouse and the equivalent of maybe what you see as an industrial cluster, including in India. And I visited a factory which made toasters and coffee-making machines. And one of the things that struck me was that everything almost was made in that factory. The second thing was that that factory was almost as big as a football field. This is a closed factory. This is not an open factory. It was closed. It was as big as a football field. And, I was with someone who was from the white goods industry, and they were explaining to me how things worked. And they were also importing, at that point, or began importing from China into India, then labeling them with their brand, and then selling them. So the first question I asked this gentleman who was accompanying us, he was obviously from India, and I said, why don't we have this in India? Why didn't, these are toasters. Surely we can build toasters. He says, no, because we've had a policy of small-scale industries, which in a way inhibited our own capabilities and our own ambitions, and we could never build, at least in this category. And our focus used to be heavy industry and mother of industries and so on. And at that time, these were toasters and coffee-making machines, which were being rolled out. The raw material for that was also in the same factory. Everything was being made. And then I asked someone. I said, where is all of this going? And he said, okay, let's walk till the end. And then you could see that the toaster was going to Philips, the coffee maker was going to DeLonghi, and something else was going to Kenwood. So they were all sending to global brands and global manufacturers right from there. And then I asked someone, I said, this is a lot, so how big are they? They said, well, this is, the product that you're looking at is roughly 3 to 4%. So I said 3 to 4% of what? They said 3 to 4% of world production of toasters are from this factory. Now, this is more than 20 years ago. So this, in a way, is my retrospective answer to the question that we are posing today, which is, why is that we are so dependent on China? So that's my little background and input. So let's start off and do the first vote. The directions for the vote has already been given to you. The theme, as you know already, is India and China must be friends. Yeah, so India and China must be friends. If you are for this statement, which is if you are for the proposition, you put up green. If you're against it, you put up red. Okay. So India and China must be friends. If you're for it, you are green. If you're against it, you're red. Okay. So Mayor is watching carefully, and I think we've got a sense. Okay, we've got a sense. Okay, it's reasonably divided, but anyway. So thank you so much for that, and remember that you have to vote once again at the end of this, after our panelists have made their arguments. So let's start off, and let me invite the first speaker for the proposition. That's Mr. Vappala Balachandran. Sure.
I'm not a diplomat, I'm an intelligence practitioner. So if I speak something bluntly, please excuse me. In 1988, when I started off in 1988, when Rajiv Gandhi made a successful visit, and when he started saying that India and China should cooperate. Uh, Perhaps we took it as a slogan. But what really happened was, at that time, China and India were on par in for example, the GDP, then the agricultural production and everything. And Deng Xiaoping himself admitted that we have no superpower ambitions. We won't be even a middle-sized power. But that didn't happen. Long ago, I wrote a column, who is responsible for China's rise? Then I came to the conclusion, it's the two countries, America and Taiwan. Now, if you see the statistics, the FDI, foreign direct investment of Taiwan in China, started in 1994 with 37.31, and it went up in 2002, 53.38 of the total FDI. And in USA, they pumped money, made into a factory for the cheap articles. And then that whole, there were 4 phases. 79 to 83, 4 special economic zones were opened by China. 1984, Hainan Island and 14 coastal cities. So the production was such that Americans were impressed. And then there was a very important meeting of the National Intelligence Council in 1999, and they recommended that China should be admitted in the WTO. That is the beginning of China's leap. Now, what you see now is a result of that. Now, I'll give you briefly 6 reasons why we have to have cordial relations with China. There is no other go. We have to. First is to implement Prime Minister Modi's strategy to make 2026 the ASEAN-India Year of Maritime Cooperation. Can we implement any of these without the concurrence of China? No, it's not possible. Now, second is, you saw the visuals, the optics of 2 big summits, ASEAN and also the AIPC, Asia Pacific Economic Community. Who dominated? You saw a spectacle of Trump inflicting 100% tariff on China and then totally withdrawing. They're almost saying that instead of Hindi-Chini, it's bhai, it is Chini, America, bhai, long, God save America and China. And Pete Hegseth, who's the defense secretary, just a day before he was boasting that he will sort of confront China, and he also echoed the same thing. America, Hindi-Chini, bhai. So, fortune, and it is Mr. Trump who started calling this particular meeting as G2. Now, Fortune magazine said that Trump's offhand reference to a G2 status to China is what it has been seeking for years. So he said this G2 meeting will lead to everlasting peace and success. God bless both China and USA. Now here, although US is the 3rd reason or 4th reason why we should have cordial relations with China is that America is the biggest trade partner. But for FY 2024, the China overtook America. Now we depend on China, the precious metals situation, as well as the medical equipment, as well as in active API, active pharmaceutical ingredient. If China wants to weaponize that, as they threatened to do it, as was reported by Wall Street Journal, we will be in a serious trouble. So with all these things, I think we need to have a diplomacy not based on prejudices, not based on past actions, but to see that China is with us. And that is, of course, left to the diplomats to achieve. And I also had done a case study that studying the Russian and China border war, and it was found that no amount of force, no amount of threat. At one time, Brezhnev threatened to use nuclear weapons against China. They were undeterred. So any amount of force through Quad or other thing is not going to succeed. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a question. Okay, you can take it here as well. Yeah. So you mentioned Taiwan as well as a factor. So why Taiwan? I mean, considering China and Taiwan are not exactly.
With America. So when you
start. Can use the microphone, yeah.
Taiwan is with America. The political dispute is there. So naturally, if America, the prime policy in Far East is protecting Taiwan. Now, when Taiwan is pumping so much money in China, isn't it a contradiction? So how can you implement a foreign or defense policy when your own ally is pumping so much money into China?
Got it. Okay. Let's keep moving. Let me invite Sriparna Pathak, first speaker for the opposition.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here, and Mumbai is one of my favorite cities. So I'm going to quickly jump into the discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed opponents and distinguished judges, imagine a friendship forged not in mutual respect, but in the cold calculus of conquest. A bond where one hand extends in trade while the other clutches a dagger at the border. That, my friends, is the illusion of India-China amity. Today, I stand resolutely against the proposition that India and China must be friends. Far from a path to peace, such a friendship would be a Faustian bargain, dooming India to subjugation in security, economy, and sovereignty. Drawing on irrefutable facts and stark statistics, I will dismantle this dangerous delusion in 3 pillars. First, unyielding territorial aggression from the PRC, predatory economic dominance, and irreconcilable strategic antagonism. First, let's consider the festering wound of territorial disputes. A betrayal so profound, it renders friendship not just unwise but impossible. For over 6 decades, China has laid illegitimate claim to vast swaths of Indian territory, from Aksai Chin to Arunachal Pradesh, spanning 3,488 kilometers of contested frontier. The 1962 Sino-Indian conflict saw China invade and occupy 38,000 square kilometers of Indian land, while it was preaching Hindi-Chini, bhai. That's friendship. That's a scar which festers today. Fast forward to June 2020, in the Galwan Valley clash, Chinese People's Liberation Army troops bludgeoned 20 Indian soldiers to death with iron clubs and stones. Cold-blooded murder, something which a friend does not do. That was not just a skirmish. By 2025, satellite imagery from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute revealed that China has constructed 16 new villages over 600 structures in disputed Bhutanese territory, encroaching further into India's buffer zones. Let's not forget the 2022 Tawang incursion, where 300 People's Liberation Army troops crossed the line of actual control, armed and unrepentant. These are not aberrations, they are policy. China's 2023 Defense White Paper boasts a military budget of $296 billion, nearly 4 times that of India's $81 billion. All of this funneled into hypersonic missiles and border infrastructure, like the G219 highway, slicing through Indian territory like a scalpel. To befriend such a neighbor is to invite the fox into the henhouse, mistaking its purr for peace while it sharpens its own claws. If borders aren't enough, let's turn to the economic stranglehold, a friendship which starves India even as it fattens Beijing. Proponents may wax this poetry about win-win cooperation, Yet, the ledger tells a completely different tale of exploitation. In the fiscal year 2023 to 2024, bilateral trade hit 118.4 billion US dollars. India's deficit ballooned to $85 billion, 72% of the total, a yawning chasm wider than the Grand Canyon of imbalance. Now, China captures 15% of India's import market, flooding India with cheap electronics, pharmaceuticals, while barricading its own doors with tariffs and non-tariff barriers, averaging 8.5% on Indian goods versus mere 3.7% from India's. This is in partnership, this is not friendship. It's predation. Witness the Belt and Road Initiative, that glittering web of debt traps ensnaring 150 countries. Sri Lanka's Hambantota port, leased to China for 99 years after defaulting on $8 billion in loans, is a harbinger. India too risks encirclement via China's $60 billion investment in Pakistan's China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which snakes through Gilgit-Baltistan, Indian territory illegally occupied by Pakistan. By 2024, China's outbound investments in India's neighborhood exceeded $50 billion, as per India's Ministry of External Affairs. And these were funding ports in Gwadar, in Myanmar, all of which choke India's maritime lifelines. In the digital realm, because we live in the internet age, China's app ban post-2020 Galwan Valley crisis saved India $1.5 billion in data outflows annually. Yet, Huawei's 5G tentacles persist, with 30% of global patents in telecoms giving Beijing leverage to spy and sabotage. Friendship here, it's economic vassalage, where India becomes a junior partner in China's century of humiliation reversed onto India's shoulders. Finally, the strategic abyss, two civilizations clashing not for harmony, but for hegemony on Asia's chessboard. China views India not as an equal, but as an obstacle in its Malacca dilemma, the choke point where 80% of oil imports are vulnerable to Indian Ocean interlection. Beijing's string of pearls encircles India's bases. There are bases in Djibouti, investments in Seychelles, Mauritius, and $62 billion in arms sales to Pakistan since 2010. So where are we here? In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is damning. A history of invasion, an economy of exploitation, a strategy of subversion. India, with our 1.4 billion dreamers and democratic vigor, cannot afford the luxury of false friends. India, in 1962, for the first time, officially learned that trust is a casualty of cartography. Let's choose vigilance over vassalage, alliance with the free world over entanglement with the autocrat. India and China must not be friends, not for enmity's sake, but for survival and for self-respect. Thank you.
So, Sriparna, quick question. So, the motion clearly is that India and China must be friends, and you've opposed it. So, what would you say they must be? I mean, if they should not be friends, then how would you define the relationship, or would you define it going forward?
Hello. Unfortunately, we don't choose neighbors. So we are neighbors and we'll stay that. India has extended a hand of friendship and peaceful coexistence. But let's not fool ourselves. That's not going to happen. If it's a friend, we trust friends. If it's a neighbor, well, we keep an eye out. We watch out.
Thank you. May I invite the second speaker for the proposition, Lieutenant General S.L. Narasimhan.
I'm sure many of you would be surprised to see me defending the motion. But when the subject came to me, I thought, let me give it a try. India-China relations have always seen ups and downs. I generally compare it with a sinusoidal curve. There have been periods of poor bilateral relations, and there have also been periods of stable relationship. There are a few things we need to keep in mind for this important relationship. China is India's neighbor, and we cannot wish it away, like Sriparna agreed. India has some very critical dependencies on China, like power, telecom equipment, solar panels, APIs for pharma industry, rare earths magnets for e-vehicles, electric components, etc. That is why we saw a trade deficit with China to the tune of approximately $100 billion last year. This year also, the trade deficit with China is likely to be the same approximately. Under Press Note 3 that came into existence in April 2020, that is prior to the Galwan incident, some investment proposals by some Chinese companies have been approved to operate in India. There has been pressure on the government to have a relook at Press Note 3. There has also been a request to ease the investment norms for Chinese companies. However, the strategic and security angle is something that all countries keep in mind. To that extent, I agree with Sriparna. It is in this milieu that we need to see the India-China relations. There are a number of actions that can be undertaken by both India and China to improve the bilateral relationship. However, we need to keep in mind 4 caveats. 1, peace and tranquility should be maintained along the line of actual control. The point to note is that we are not looking for the resolution of the boundary question in toto. We are simply looking for maintenance of peace and tranquility, which has been a prerequisite for better bilateral relations. 2, we need to follow 3 mutuals, that is mutual respect, mutual sensitivity, and mutual interest. 3, there needs to be a level playing ground for Indian companies. And 4, both countries should maintain mutual and equal security. If these are met, then there are many actions that can be undertaken to improve the bilateral relationship between India and China. I would like to mention 6 points. First, to strengthen the political dialogue and strategic communication. How do you do that? Increase the number of exchanges at higher level. Fully utilize the dialogue mechanism. We have 20+ dialogue mechanisms going on with China for a very long time. Increase the interaction between the state and the provincial leaders, which has been happening earlier. Establish the hotline between 2 military headquarters, which has been under discussion for a very long time. Increase the locations of border personal meetings. During the visit of Mr. Wang Yi, the Foreign Minister of China, it was decided to establish higher-level military commanders meeting in other sectors also, as it is being done in eastern Ladakh. Second is to improve the closer development partnership. Both sides can work towards reducing the impediments in bilateral trade and investment. There is a one-sided trade balance at this point in time that needs to be looked into. Local governments can strengthen trade in identified sectors such as pharma, IT, tourism, textiles, and agro products. Take measures to alleviate skewed bilateral trade by cooperating on identified sectors. There are some sectors which have been identified earlier. Establish speedier phytosanitary conditions for agricultural trade and stronger links between IT companies. Increase services trade in tourism, films, healthcare, and logistics. Use fully the joint India-China economic group and work toward gradual reduction of tariffs under the Asia-Pacific Trade Agreement. Resume strategic economic dialogue between Niti Aayog India and National Development Reforms Commission of China, which was going on earlier. There are many things that you can list like that. Third is the culture and people-to-people exchanges. Recommence and expand the youth exchange program that was established earlier. Establishment of collaboration between ICCR and Yunnan National University that was agreed upon. There are many such activities that can go on to increase the culture and people-to-people exchanges. Fourth is trans-border cooperation. The flood season hydrological data was being provided by China. The same has been agreed upon by China on a humanitarian basis. Provision of this data can be expanded to cover the entire year. Cooperation on emergency management for national calamities has been agreed upon earlier. It can be promulgated. Border trade at Nathula, Shipkila, and Lipu Lake can be expanded. Fifth is shaping the regional and global agenda. Consultation on international peace, security, and development, and work together to shape regional and global agenda outcomes. Coordinate and cooperate in Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS, and G20. Similarly, you can go along on terrorism, on other reforms of UN, etc., etc. Other avenues, vocational trade and skill development is one area in which we can collaborate and cooperate. Cooperation in developing smart cities, like, for example, Shenzhen with Gift City in India, peaceful uses of nuclear energy and space, cooperation in lunar and deep space exploration, many such things can be done. Digital empowerment, and also support and strengthen the rules-based multilateral trading system, which we both support. So there are climate change issues and sustainable development goals All these are areas in which we can collaborate and cooperate with them without compromising the strategic and the security concerns. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
General Narasimhan, you talked about the maintaining peace on the line of actual control. So even, if you could explain to the audience, we've obviously conceded territory. What is our current position on that? When you say we talk about friendship, from a security establishment perspective, are we putting that aside? Are we forgetting about it? And how are we looking at the future?
Okay, I need to take a minute on this,
Sure.
so if you permit me. When you say we have lost territory, are you meaning post-2020 or before 2020?
I think she referred to before 2020.
Right. So that kind of a territory we lost between 58 and 1962, okay? That happened in Eastern Ladakh. During 1962, we lost further territory in Arunachal Pradesh, but then they went back. The point that we have to have is, that is the point I mentioned here. We are looking for peace and tranquility along the line of actual control. That does not mean that we will resolve the boundary issue tomorrow. We all understand that the boundary issue is going to be extremely complex and complicated to resolve. It is going to take a lot of time and effort. But if we can at least maintain peace and tranquility along the line of actual control, then we can get to move on the other things which can improve the relationship bilaterally. That is the point I was trying to mention.
Okay, and you're saying post-2020 there is no...
Yeah, I agree. Post-2020, what has happened, in the 4 areas in which the intrusions took place at that point in time, that is basically in the area of Galwan, then what is known as patrolling point 14 and 15, then on the Pankungso Lake, and down in the area of Demchok. In the 4 points that I mentioned, there is a temporary moratorium on patrolling. Please note, it is a temporary moratorium on patrolling that needs to be negotiated. When you say temporary moratorium, if you don't have access to a part of that area, so are the Chinese. Even they can't come in. So you can't consider that as a loss of territory. Depsang and Demchok, which are further north and further south of these 4 points, were actually negotiated and resolved. That is the agreement that we signed on the 1st of October 2024, and there our patrolling has resumed to those areas where we are going earlier. So to that extent, I would say that we have not lost any territory post-2020.
Okay, thank you. I invite Sandeep, Unnithan.
Thank you. The fundamental difference between the Ramayana and the Mahabharata is that the Ramayana is about an idealistic world. It's about the good son, the good husband, the good wife. Everything is in black and white, right? So you have India, Hindi-Chini, bhai. So I think, but of late it's B-U-Y. They want to keep us, buying from them. The Mahabharata is actually the way the world is. It's not the way we want the world to be. And unfortunately, that's the way the world is when it comes to India and China. We can never be friends. Because what are the 3 fundamentals for friendship? It's trust, it's mutual respect, and it's shared interests. We don't share anything in common with the Chinese. We are a democracy. We are the largest democracy in the world. We are very proud of who we are. The Chinese have been for almost 80 years a communist dictatorship. So there is something wrong in that DNA of that friendship that we are talking about. And there are about 5 reasons why I think we are not going to be friends with China. One is, of course, you heard from Sriparna, the irreconcilable territorial disputes. If China's claims on India were implemented on the ground, I can assure all of you here, you would not recognize the map of India. You would not have 2 states. They claim all of Arunachal Pradesh. They claim large parts of Jammu and Kashmir. They do not believe in the territorial integrity of India. Which friend does that? The second is, of course, the geopolitical and strategic rivalry. They have always strived very hard to cut us down to size, and that's one reason that they've encouraged Pakistan. They have driven a Belt and Road initiative through our territory that we claim in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir through Gilgit-Baltistan. Which friend does that? Third, of course, is you heard about the economic asymmetries and the dependencies that they have cultivated They have weaponized trade. In fact, they've weaponized everything. They've weaponized trade, they've weaponized rare earths. They have, of course, weaponized the border. They have weaponized infrastructure, and they've used it against us. We've seen that dependency, that very acute dependency that we saw, $120 billion bilateral trade where we buy $100 billion worth of goods from them and they buy, what, $20 billion from us? It's one of the most unequal trade balances anywhere in the world. And of course, I mentioned the ideological differences that we have with China. It's a communist dictatorship, for God's sake. You can't be friends with communist dictatorships which claim 5,000 years of ruling the world and claim everything under the sun. And then finally, this is the most important point, the trust deficit, the military posturing. Now, you've heard about how they've betrayed us in the past. 1962, this Hindi-Chini, bhai illusion that we lived in. Mao slapped us. Xi Jinping did that again in 2020 when we were close to, thank God for that actually. Chinese are great teachers, by the way. They wake us up every now and then, every time we get into this thing of, Hindi-Chini, bhai, whack. And you're back on track, right? So they did that in 62, they did that in 2020. They're great teachers. They keep us on our toes. And, we've always known it. A very significant part of our security establishment knows this. If you read the declassified papers of the P.N. Haksar and our former president, K.R. Narayanan, who actually advocated for nuclear weapons in 64, that is how frightened we were of the Chinese when they tested their nuclear weapons. And here is something that they did, this great country that we want to be friends with. Have you ever wondered how Pakistan, which is a country that hasn't made a motor car even, how did it get nuclear weapons? Right? You know where they got their nuclear weapons from? They got it from China. In the 80s, the Chinese transferred highly enriched uranium, bomb blueprints. They tested a weapon for Pakistan, a weapon called the CHIC-84, a nuclear weapon. They weaponized Pakistan against us. This has never happened in the history of nuclear weapons in the last 80 years. And this is a country you want to be friends with. And this country then, Pakistan, uses those nuclear weapons against you for what we call nuclear weapons-enabled terrorism. They carry out terror attacks. Here in Mumbai, 700 people have died because of Pakistan's terrorism, 1993, 2006, and of course, I don't need to tell you, 2008, 26/11. All that because they had been armed with nuclear weapons from China, and they used that to deter us. How can we be friends with a country like this, which considers itself as an empire? They don't consider us friends. For them, everybody is a vassal state. They only believe in vassals who will kowtow to them. We can't be friends with China. It's an accident of geography. The British Empire never allowed China to share a border with us. They always had a buffer state like Tibet. And unfortunately, the biggest catastrophe in India's history in the 1950s was the loss of Tibet. Because the loss of Tibet means that China has a boundary with us, 3,400 odd kilometers. And today we have the greatest threat that independent India faces is with a superpower on our doorstep. We've never faced that problem ever in the history. So that is something that we have to live with, our children have to live with. Unfortunately, we can never be friends with a communist dictatorship like China. Thank you.
Sandeep, very quick question. So all of what you said we know, and we've known for a while, including China's dominance in manufacturing and our dependence on them. Why are we not able to counter that? I mean, I'll give you an example. Something like erythromycin, antibiotic, and we refer to chemical imports. China supplies 97%. So if they were to stop supplying erythromycin, a lot more people would be falling ill right here. So that's just one illustration. So why are we not able to counter this?
Because Xi Jinping doesn't have to fight elections every 6 months, I think. Every Zilla Parishad, RWA, state elections, central elections. He's focused on the economy, he's focused on military, he's focused on building the tools of great power. He doesn't have to bother about the things that our politicians, unfortunately, we are a vibrant, loud, noisy democracy. We have, Bihar elections on right now. The entire effort of the state is focused on that. They they know where they want to be. And that's the reason why you mentioned that the toasters, I was thinking, Govind, they want to toast India, basically. We are the toast in their toaster, basically. That's what it is.
Okay, they also make coffee machines. I mean, that was the factory that I went to.
Coffee beans, then.
Coffee beans. Okay, so this is now time for rebuttal. So each speaker will get 2 minutes to rebut something said by the other side, and this is in the same speaking order. So may I first invite our first speaker, Mr. Balachandran.
My point is that the cardinal principle in life is who needs whom. Right now, we need them. Without them, we will have no pharmaceutical production. We won't have rare earth, etc. So we need them. We have to compromise with them. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Sriparna?
Thank you. Quick rebuttals. The previous speakers, when they spoke, they mentioned a few terms, and I'm going to pick on those terms. Apologies in advance. Balachandran sir said that we need to have cordial relations with the PRC. Cordial relations not equal to friendship. Second, sir also mentioned that can we implement India's visions with concurrence of China? Again, if we have to seek concurrence, we are not friends. We should not be friends. It was also mentioned as to how Donald Trump has gone completely off the rails and now he's talking about a G2 and so on. Okay, fair enough. There can be more than one bully in the class. One doesn't need to seek protection from one of the two bullies because the other two bullies want to have fun. Active pharmaceutical ingredients, if China wants to weaponize that, we will be in trouble. Does a friend do that? Weaponize things to put the friend into trouble. I don't think we are friends, definitely. If there is a fear from us, we don't fear our friends. Second, SCO. A lot was talked about the SCO. China got Pakistan into the SCO. Its true friend. Russia got India into the SCO. That's there. Since we're talking about Pakistan, at the level of the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, we have RATS, Regional Anti-Terror. It's a mechanism to fight back against terrorism. But never does China ever allow the concept of jihadi terrorism to come in because protecting its friend, which is Pakistan. And Pakistan, unfortunately, is not India's friends. China has also pushed in the concept of its own three evils, which it utilizes against, Tibet, Taiwan, and so on. India has accepted, saying that, okay, let's try this friendship. But for how long do we do this? Because it's not an equal ground. So I rest my case.
Okay, thank you. General Narasimhan.
I'll take some points from Sriparna. She talked about India may be subjugated. India may be subjugated if you allow it to be subjugated. So we don't have to worry on that score. Second thing is about economic stranglehold. We allowed them to do that. Why are we worried about it at this point in time if we can, with their help, overcome that stranglehold? Debt trap, Huawei's domination, all these things are actually an issue that we need to deal with. Because of that, you can't put the entire relationship at jeopardy. Two civilizations clashing, arms sales to Pakistan, etc., etc. We de-hyphenated this relationship in 1997-98 and said that we will improve our relationship with China, notwithstanding what China does with Pakistan. So why are we going back to it at this point in time? Sandeep mentioned about democracy dictatorship. Then if it is a socialist country and the system is not democratic, how are you maintaining good relationship with Russia? So obviously you can't have one scale for one and the other one for other. And similarly, geopolitical rivalry, CPEC, etc., etc. All these things are fine. The weaponizing trade, we also do it at times. I'm sure people sitting in front would know that. So the point I'm trying to say is let us not bring the history to play. Let us not bring other things to play. Given the caveats that I mentioned, if we can manage them, I think there is a lot of scope for India and China to improve their relationship. Whether you want to be friends, whether you want to be cordial relationship, whether these two are equal, these are all matter of semantics. So let us now move on and see how we can improve this relationship, given those caveats in mind. Thank you.
Okay. Sandeep.
Very quickly to what General Narasimhan said. We don't have any disputes with Russia. We don't share a boundary with Russia. We don't have a 3,400 kilometer disputed boundary with Russia. Russia is the only country in the world that has transferred to us nuclear submarine technology, know-how to build our own submarines, ballistic missile submarines. No country has done that in the history of the world. It's allowed us to build our own second strike capability to protect for national survival. It has given us BrahMos missiles. Operation Sindoor would have failed but for the BrahMos missiles. You've all seen that. And guess who was supporting Pakistan during Operation Sindoor? I'm not going that far into time, General Narasimhan. Just look at the kind of intelligence that the Pakistanis got from China, where to the extent that today the Indian strategic community says we are not facing two fronts between Pakistan and China, we are facing one front. And that front is the front that supplies from China missiles, technology, satellite data, intelligence, cyber warfare, everything comes from China. So they are fighting a proxy war. As Bruce Lee says in Enter the Dragon, the art of fighting without fighting. That's what the Chinese are doing to us.
Thank you, Sandeep. A nice Bruce Lee quote, which I should use at some other point. Okay, audience, this is your 10 minutes, 12 minutes actually. So who wants to go first? So I'm going to collect questions and then try and merge them, okay? So who wants to go first? Yes. Mics? Okay, it's coming from the back. I think the mayor has already warned you, no comments, just quick questions, and please keep it brief.
We have noticed that in the times of Xi Jinping, the tensions have soared and the distrust has increased. And we've heard news of Xi Jinping's ouster or exit. What are the chances of the relationship improving after Xi Jinping? Or is it a CCP thing which is contributing to this, bitterness?
Okay, good question. If Xi Jinping goes, if he does go, then what happens after that? Yes? First, okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the question that I have is actually for you, sir. You said that you need to have a shared sort of a thing to have a friendship, but we can also have a shared interest, considering today's economy where we are all aiming towards de-dollarization, and the way to go would be Russia, India, and China. Why is it that we should not be friends? Also to say and to highlight, we don't want to be best friends with them. We want to be friends with boundaries, which is what Sir mentioned. So why is that not a way to go?
Okay, friends with boundaries, first row. I'll come back. Yeah. First row. Yeah.
Hi,
Okay,
I have a question. I fully understand why we can't be friends with China, but there is something called BRICS, as we all know, and that is the power of tomorrow. The real enemy, I think, is America and the dollar. America has done so much of harm to the whole world. So how do you think will this equation work if we break with China?
And could that change after Trump, right? The question before you was, could things change after Xi Jinping? Maybe the question, yeah, here, first row. Okay.
This is for the opposition, against the motion. See, the statement, the proposition is a futuristic statement. It says India and China must be friends in the future. So there's no point discussing history. China has many challenges like aging and slowing down GDP, rising unemployment, growth is... So looking at that, and Mr. Xi Jinping is not going to be forever. Considering all that, there is scope for having, there are areas of common interest and friendship is defined appropriately. So take into account China's vulnerabilities as well.
Okay, thank you. Can the mic come here? Yeah.
China is a known bully. China is a known bully, worldwide accepted bully. Can anybody ever be friends with a bully?
Okay.
So,
yeah. One second. Can I just, yeah.
It was there? You want?
The law of the jungle is big fish eat small fish. China is miles ahead of India. All our neighbors have moved away from India and towards China. How can we be friends with China? And even in the South China Seas, apart from Tibet, all the countries are having skirmishes with China. And what they've done in Galvan, I disagree with you. I think they've taken our territory. So how can we be friends with them? Thank you.
Yes, am I missing someone that side? Yeah, can we take the mic back there? At the back? Yeah.
Hi, my question is if India decides to shift the idea of being a manufacturing leader, will China still, back off, or will they try, or will they still try to be aggressive, or will they still ask India to be, submissive if they move to any other sort of being a business acumen
Okay.
to the world?
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. I mean, literally or figuratively? Huh? Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. Yes. I'll come back here. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question for Sandeep sir. So I wanted to know that whether just over here. Yeah, so I wanted to know that even America is a democracy. There are many democracies. So is being a democracy an impediment when it comes to economy? That is what I wanted to know.
Okay. So can I put that question back to you? I mean, and you said America. So America is a democracy, but
Yeah. So Sandeep sir made a comment that in India there are due to elections,
yeah.
due to things like that, growth perspective is often times it hinders
Right.
the growth perspective.
Okay. Thank you. Can we come back this side? Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So, sorry for that. So, while, speakers against the motion, they have invoked emotion, they have invoked history, but they have not given us the alternate. What are the alternates available to us? One tunnel boring machine that was not being allowed to ship to India by China stalled our railway project for months. So what are the alternates that we have? And that is something that we should, ask speakers against the motion.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm an ex-army officer, sir. So this question would be directed to General Narasimhan, sir. It's primarily about Mao Zedong's philosophy of the palm and the five fingers, and now what's happening with the string of pearls. While the China takes concrete actions to surround us, or rather keeps us busy, and we still talk about the similar philosophy of Hindi-Chini, bhai, what we're doing in 62. We are having a discussion about being friends. So how does it, plays out, or rather we are going for a revision of whatever has happened?
Okay, got it. Can we, I'll come back to the back. Where's the microphone?
Hello.
It's here. Okay, can you take it at the back?
Hello, may I just ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Colonel Sujit Sinha here. So my biggest regret is that I could not fight a war against Chinese. Otherwise, I had their toast and tea also, coffee also. But now, I buy all the points made by Sandeep and Sriparna. But the point is, can we fight a war against China now? Is there a choice?
Okay. Yeah.
Hello, I'd just like to ask Sandeep. He says that China is a communist, is a communist government. What guarantees that it will remain communist? It might become democratic. What happens then?
Okay. Okay, I'm guessing there's a lot of skepticism on that comment, but it's a provocative one. Yeah, right at the back.
One quick question for both teams. What are best practices that India could take from China's development trajectory over the last 25, 30 years?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, fair point. We should learn from them as well.
Quick question to the opposition. What was Modi's intent when he was singing Lullaby and Rocking She in that famous picture in Ahmedabad?
Okay. Can we come back in the middle? Middle, yeah. Yeah, I'm coming to you. Yeah, the lady in the red.
I just wanted to ask, would China have any incentive in creating the Chinese economic miracle in India without making it its vassal?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
If India is the elephant and China the dragon,
there is the snow lion in the room. I'm talking about Tibet. Tibet cannot be ignored at all. And what would happen after His Holiness 14th Dalai Lama attains Nirvana? Will the Tibetan refugee community be deported in chains back to China?
Okay.
I'm speaking on behalf of Friends of Tibet.org. Our chairman, Mr. Kalyanpur, is here with some material for the chair, the opposition, and especially the proposition on behalf of Friends of Tibet.org. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, hello.
The lady to your right. Could you give the microphone to the lady to your right? Yeah.
Hi, I realize
Yeah,
that
come.
everybody loves the people in the opposition, and I do too. And I would like to pose a question specifically to Sriparna. You talked about how we should be watching the neighbors and not be friends. I'd like for you to elaborate on that statement because I'd like more specifics to understand what you mean by watching them.
Okay, last one or two questions.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I wanted to know, apart from the border dispute, that China always oppose our proposal to declare terrorist in the Pakistan in the United States forum.
Yeah.
China always oppose. China is the only country who opposed to declare those terrorists in the United Nations forum. And another thing is that when the American and the India nuclear treaty was done, China again opposed the nuclear fuel supply agreement. So there also China opposed that. So why a friend has to do all this?
All of this. Okay. Behind you, could you give it to that lady? Yeah.
If China offers to establish manufacturing units in India, would still India sort of encompass that in the Make in India initiative and be like Modi, Jinping, dictator, so friends or something? Yeah.
Okay, can you bring it back here? Last two questions. Yeah. Is anyone here? Okay, no, this we've done. Okay, I'll come back to you.
At some point, sir
Microphone, yeah.
mentioned that we need to establish hotlines between military strongholds. My question is, what's the point of these hotlines if the threat of hostility comes from the other side?
Okay, thank you. Okay, here, last question.
Sandeep sir mentioned that China is a good teacher, but I think China is a good enemy to India, and it pretends to be a good friend sometimes with a wolf's attitude. So how do you...
Okay, can you give it to the lady there, the back? Last question.
Thank you. So the team that is opposing, I think there was a lot of points in terms of why China and India cannot be friends, should not be friends. But my only question is, considering the points that you mentioned on our challenges with bureaucracy and dependence, etc., can we afford to not be cordial, good neighbors, friends, whatever is the term you want to use?
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So now, we don't unfortunately have time. No, we've run out of time. Time to respond to each of them. So the format is this. Each of the speakers will give a 1-minute closing remark in the same sequence that they originally started out. So it's back to you, Mr. Balachandran.
India had as much chance to become the powerhouse of the world as China has, but we lost that opportunity. Why couldn't we attract FDI all these years when China was quietly doing it? Incidentally, China is the only country which has become a superpower because through their intelligence. I didn't want to mention that because I'll be going into a very difficult subject to explain. Half of China's success in being a superpower is through their intelligence agency. Why couldn't we do that same thing in India? So right now, we should not mix morality with statecraft. Statecraft, we have to consider the situation as it is. So the best is to deal with China as it is. Don't ascribe what you want them to be according to our, notions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful questions. Very difficult to sum up in one point. Statecraft is based on memory and on history. If a state forgets what has happened to it, not once, not twice, not thrice, but over and over and over again, there cannot be no policy for the future. India and China are not friends. India and China never were friends, as has been proved in the past through multiple examples. And this leads us to understand India and China cannot be friends. I think all of us love being a democracy. So let's assume this. If we give more and more and more territory away, would we want to live the way that common ordinary Chinese people are living, or even the Tibetans under Chinese occupation are living? So that's a big scenario. There is a saying in Chinese, Ishan Arhu, which basically means one mountain cannot have two tigers. The mountain that China is living in is Asia. Any theory of international relations also tells us that this is just not possible. So India needs to smell the coffee and probably make its own coffee maker as well. Thank you.
So I think it emerged in the introductions, but we have two Mandarin speakers here. One is in the opposition and one is in the proposition. So fairly well divided. Go ahead.
I'll answer 3 or 4 questions because there is the time that is available. Cease exit will help or not, we should not be placing our bets on any individual. We should be placing bets on the government's policy, country's policy, and so we should deal with it as it is. The other thing is about, hotlines somebody asked. Hotlines do help. All the formations I commanded were on the Chinese front. Hotlines always help. Manufacturing units in India, if they establish, will you agree? Manufacturing units have not come to India. We have allowed Chinese investments to come into India for the last 20 years. We didn't get the benefits out of it. Notwithstanding all that, there are no permanent friends and enemies in international relations. Sriparna knows it. And the recent actions have indicated that there are also no permanent interests. So you find permanent friends, permanent enemies, and permanent interests. They are not going to be there. You will have to make use of what is available, and that is why we need to maintain a better relationship with China.
Okay. Thank you. Sandeep?
Yeah, right. Fantastic questions, and I'm so sorry we couldn't take all of them one after the other, maybe after the event. But very quickly to sum up, one of the greatest quotes that came out of China in the 20th century was Deng Xiaoping when he said, "Hide your strength, bide your time." And I think India should follow Deng Xiaoping's policy. We should hide our strength, bide our time, because in the middle of the 21st century, there will be only 3 countries that will matter. That is the United States, there is China and India. And the 3 most important relationships will be the relationships between India, China, and the United States. The problem is that we have to deal with the United States, as someone mentioned. They're not very friendly to us. When we rise on our own, we will not be friends with the United States either. And we have to prepare for that eventuality. But I'm saying that for us, a distant hegemon is less of a threat than the near hegemon. A near hegemon is someone who's sitting on the border with me, almost 3,000 kilometers, and I have no option but to deal with him. And for God's sake, keep the powder dry, as they say in the military. Build up your infrastructure, build up your military capabilities, build up your airfields or air forces. Right. Prepare for war with China to deter war. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Meher, you have an announcement?
This is a very quick announcement. The owner of car number M801EV1103, your driver has had a medical emergency and we have dealt with it. But if the owner of car number M801EV1103 is here, please could you step out and go to your car? This is a medical emergency, please, at the earliest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Meher. Okay, we've come to almost the end of our debate today. So, I have some time to sum up, but I'm going to mostly skip that. I think the questions were very useful, very practical. I think one of the key questions was, how do you look at this issue going forward? Should we be friends in future, regardless of what our history was? Does it serve our purpose? What happens when a tunnel boring machine doesn't turn up and I have to face traffic jams in Lower Parel for 2 more years? And can we, and how do we address that? And the fact is that if we are going to import so many things, if all our efforts at insulating ourselves have not worked, is there any other option? And if so, what it is? So these are questions. There are no answers. Sometimes things change when leaders change. We've seen things change for maybe the bad in some ways. We are currently in a very almost hostile geopolitical world. We are facing trade barriers with the United States, 50% imports, which is a wall effectively. It's not even a tariff. Not something that we would have expected from a friend who we thought was a friend. So these are things to think about and ponder about, and it's also time now to close and pose the second vote, or bring up the second vote. So just to remind you, the debate was India and China must be friends. If you are for, then you are green. If you are against, you are red. Okay, so for the motion and against the motion. So there you are. So we're calculating the results. So the first vote, the majority of you said that India and China must be friends, but thanks to very strong opposition from Sriparna and Sandeep, obviously they've convinced a lot of you to adopt a more middle position with the Middle Kingdom. And yeah. But at the same time, there is no clear victor. So
can we ask for a recount also?
This is a season of politics, elections going on, recounts are the order of the day. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here, for your wonderful questions, and being a great audience.